If you're here to gain knowledge quickly, thoroughly, and with just enough surprising context to make you the smartest person in the room, then you are exactly where you need to be. Welcome to the deep dive.
Today, we're analyzing a really complex problem. I mean, it's something every community, every government agency, and every large nonprofit faces. It's this core tension in the public sector. We demand services that are fast, modern, brilliantly innovative.
Right, like renewing your driver's license online or getting disaster relief quickly.
Exactly. But at the very same time, we absolutely insist on rigorous accountability, absolute fairness, and strict compliance with every single rule.
It's the impossible balancing act. It really is. And that simultaneous demand creates this unique battleground for the people actually doing the work.
Yeah.
So this deep dive is really about isolating three critical factors: public service motivation, organizational red tape, and job satisfaction, and figuring out how they all interact.
And that interaction, it determines everything. When innovation stalls in the public sphere, it's not just some minor inconvenience. No, not at all.
It means delayed climate adaptation. It means outdated digital services, clumsy responses to public health crises. And if job satisfaction drops, we lose our best talent.
We lose the people who care the most. They just get frustrated by the barriers they face day in and day out, and they leave.
So our mission today is to take the sources you shared with us and really synthesize how this trio either creates these amazing, high-performing organizations or it just drains them until progress is impossible.
That's the goal.
Okay, let's unpack that core energy source first. The sources call it public service motivation, or PSM. It sounds a little academic, so let's define it. What's the difference between PSM and just, being a good employee?
That's a great question. PSM is really the intrinsic fuel that powers public service. It's defined as an individual's orientation towards serving the public interest.
So it's more than a steady paycheck.
Much more. It's characterized by an attraction to policymaking, a really deeply felt commitment to civic duty, compassion, and even a willingness for self-sacrifice. That's why that foundational definition from Perry and Wise is still so critical today.
So if profit is the engine of the private sector, PSM is kind of the organizational battery of the public sector.
Precisely. High PSM drives employees to persist through these really frustrating challenges that, a profit-driven employee might just abandon. They'll problem solve because it benefits people, not because there's a massive bonus at the end.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, based on the research. If this motivation is so powerful, why isn't the public sector just constantly buzzing with energy and innovation?
And that is the crucial nugget of insight you have to take away from this. PSM alone is insufficient. We only see the positive effects of this motivation on performance when the organization actively supports employee autonomy and, crucially, reduces those obstructive barriers.
So you can hire motivated people, but if you immediately handcuff them with pointless procedures...
that battery runs flat, incredibly fast.
Which brings us directly to the handcuffs. Red tape. But, and this is a distinction we have to make, not all bureaucracy is bad bureaucracy. Can you clarify that for us?
Absolutely, because if you try to get rid of all the rules, you just end up with chaos and corruption.
Yeah.
We have to separate true red tape from what the sources call functional formalization.
Functional formalization.
Okay, think of it as the necessary guardrails. These are the essential procedures that ensure genuine accountability, transparency, legal compliance, like standard processes for bidding on contracts to prevent insider deals. These rules serve a legitimate purpose.
So if functional formalization is the necessary guardrail, then true red tape is just an arbitrary roadblock.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
True red tape is defined as rules, regulations, procedures that are still enforced. They impose a burden, but they serve no legitimate organizational purpose. Or, even worse, they generate negative net benefits. It's that 3-page form asking for information the agency already has.
Or a rule designed 20 years ago for a mainframe computer that's still on the books.
Exactly.
And this friction, this unnecessary compliance, what does it actively do to innovation?
It acts like a corrosive acid.
Yeah.
I mean, first, it just crowds out the time you need for creative work. Second, it breeds risk aversion.
Right.
Public servants facing pointless rules learn really fast that it's safer to do things the slow, mandated way than to try an innovative path that might technically violate some outdated procedure.
It signals that compliance matters more than outcomes.
Yes. And this constant unnecessary friction, it just diminishes the agency's adaptive capacity, its ability to actually change and respond to what the public needs.
So we have the energy source, PSM, and the friction, red tape. How do they interact with that third piece?
Job satisfaction.
Job satisfaction.
Yeah.
It sounds like high motivation should act as a shield, right? Buffering the employee against the bureaucracy.
And it can, initially.
Mm.
High PSM does provide some resilience. When that PSM is coupled with even a moderate level of job satisfaction, the employee feels supported, sees some progress, it acts as a powerful catalyst.
So they're empowered to find workarounds.
They find innovative workarounds around the necessary procedures, yes.
But the danger is the inverse. If the organizational structure, riddled with this procedural burden, just systematically erodes that job satisfaction.
Then you lose your capacity to innovate entirely. That's right. The most mission-driven staff, they eventually face burnout. They disengage or they just quit.
Yeah.
The bureaucracy, when it's left unchecked, it systematically attacks the very motivation that could have fixed it.
Let's try to quantify this a bit. When we look at measurable organizational outcomes, what actually changes when red tape starts winning this war against PSM?
The sources show a really clear pattern. Agencies with high PSM, they often start with superior performance, shorter processing times, higher citizen satisfaction. But that benefit just diminishes rapidly as red tape increases.
It's like a sports car with the brakes on.
Exactly. Great engine, but you're still going slow. And the cost of keeping those brakes on is immense.
Okay, so what does that cost?
Well, the cost of inaction is both organizational and human. Organizationally, it's pretty straightforward. Declining job satisfaction links directly to more absenteeism and, crucially, higher turnover.
And we're not just talking about average turnover, right?
Now, the research shows this turnover is concentrated among the high performers, the ones with the strongest PSM.
So the organization is hemorrhaging the very people it needs to drive any kind of improvement.
Exactly. And what's left is a workforce that shows reduced discretionary effort. They stop doing anything beyond what's explicitly required.
And innovation requires that extra effort.
Innovation is all discretionary effort. It's that 10% extra to test a new idea or write a proposal. When that vanishes, you see the financial implications. Duplicative approvals, inefficient workflows, and just wasted resources on compliance that generates no public value. This is money that could literally be funding the mission.
That's the macro picture. Let's shift to the psychological toll, because this is where the human cost becomes just so stark. If you enter public service driven by compassion, that collision between high PSM and red tape has to be devastating.
It creates a very specific type of distress. It's often described as cynicism or even moral injury. The individual is motivated to serve, but the organization prevents them from doing so effectively. They're constantly facing this cognitive dissonance.
Wanting to help, but being procedurally barred from helping.
Yes, in a timely or effective way.
And this has to be amplified for frontline workers, right? The ones who are directly facing the people the system is failing. Let's use that example from the research to illustrate this.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. Imagine a child welfare worker, highly motivated to protect children, who finds a safe, supportive foster placement for a child in immediate danger.
Okay.
But the placement is delayed for 3 weeks because some totally irrelevant internal form needs triplicate signatures, or the approval process is tied to an outdated funding cycle.
So that worker knows the system is designed to protect children, but they are watching firsthand how the procedures are actively harming a child by creating delay and uncertainty.
Precisely. They see that gap between the organizational mission, the whole reason they showed up to work, and the organizational reality every single day. And that constant exposure to institutional failure, it just erodes their belief in the system and, of course, their job satisfaction.
So job satisfaction becomes a key variable here.
It becomes the critical mediating force. Employees who manage to maintain satisfaction, maybe through a supportive boss or strong team cohesion, they can sustain that PSM and high performance. But once that satisfaction plummets, it's not just apathy. It's a deep professional disillusionment that depletes even the strongest initial commitment.
Okay, so we've established the problem. Motivated people are being burned out by unnecessary friction. If we accept that we can't just eliminate all bureaucracy, the question shifts to management. What are the evidence-based solutions leaders can actually deploy? Let's start with communication.
The first, and often the simplest, remedy for frustration is transparent communication. It's setting expectations. Public servants are smart. When they understand why a certain frustrating procedure exists, maybe it's a legal mandate or a requirement for equity, they shift their focus. They're far more likely to find creative solutions within those constraints rather than just seeing the rule as some arbitrary obstacle.
So leaders need to be candid. They have to acknowledge the pointless procedures, but also explain the political or legal realities behind them. It shows respect for the employee's intelligence.
And you can formalize that transparency. A great specific example from the research is implementing quarterly red tape reduction workshops.
Okay, what are those?
They're structured sessions where the regional teams, the people dealing with the rules every day, sit down with the central policy staff, and they collaboratively identify and work to eliminate or streamline unnecessary approval steps. It turns compliance from a barrier into a shared project.
Now, what about procedural justice? It seems like beyond what the rules are, how they're applied matters immensely.
It matters just as much as the outcome itself. Research shows that employees maintain far higher satisfaction when they perceive decision-making processes as fair.
And fair means what, exactly?
It means voice, consistency, bias suppression, and a clear explanation. If you have to deny an employee the chance to try a pilot program, they'll accept that no much more easily if the process felt fair.
So what does that look like in practice?
It means participatory rulemaking. It means including frontline staff on implementation teams. A strong example is municipal governments setting up innovation review boards with both executives and frontline staff. These boards evaluate requests for procedural exceptions to support innovation, but they use transparent criteria like potential public benefit and a risk mitigation plan. It signals support without abandoning accountability.
Okay, moving to the capability gap. We have motivated employees, but they often lack the skill set, design thinking, rapid prototyping to actually implement innovative solutions within public service constraints. Motivation isn't enough. They need tools.
That's the solution. A dual investment in structured development and protected time. You have to protect time for exploration, maybe 10–15% of their work hours, and provide tailored training. It can't be some off-the-shelf corporate training.
Right.
It needs to be human-centered design adapted for the realities of budget cycles and legal constraints.
So this moves innovation from just being an aspiration to being a structured skill.
Exactly. Creating intensive innovation programs, maybe week-long offsites, where cross-agency teams tackle real shared challenges, is incredibly effective. They build confidence, they generate tangible improvements, and critically, they build those cross-agency networks that are essential for long-term change.
Let's tackle the fundamental problem of governance. The traditional top-down hierarchy just seems fundamentally incompatible with innovation that needs speed and flexibility.
You need hybrid governance models.
Yeah.
This means structural innovations like two-speed governance architectures.
Two-speed governance.
Yeah. In this model, you maintain strong, robust controls for core operations, the things that absolutely cannot fail, like payroll. But you have different, lighter approval processes for exploratory innovation, focused on rapid learning.
Wait, I can hear a skeptical listener right now. Wouldn't that two-speed governance just create an easy way for people to ignore the rules they don't like?
That's the challenge, and it's why the accountability structures have to be transparent. The key is establishing innovation sandboxes with pre-approved risk parameters. You clearly define what can be tested, the maximum financial exposure, and the metrics for success before the experiment even starts.
So it allows for rapid experimentation without all the cumbersome approvals for every little test.
Exactly. Think of large healthcare systems. They set up innovation hubs and regional networks, empowering those hubs to facilitate local adoption of new practices. They don't need central approval for every single adaptation across 50 different facilities. That's distributed authority in action.
Okay, our final point on solutions has to be recognition. So many agencies reward strict compliance with actual career consequences, but they only offer, rhetorical praise for innovators. The incentives are totally misaligned.
The change has to be systemic. Recognition systems need to honor multiple forms of contribution, and specifically, they have to celebrate intelligent failures that generate learning.
That's critical for psychological safety.
Paramount. The best systems, like Interministerial Public Innovator Awards nominated by peers, specifically recognize teams whose experiments failed but provided valuable, documented insights. That reinforces the value of smart risk-taking.
We've talked about fixes and structural tweaks. Let's shift to the long game. These solutions only stick if the underlying relationship between the employee and the organization is sound. That traditional psychological contract job stability for lower pay and putting up with bureaucracy, that's unstable. It's outdated.
Agencies need to explicitly update that contract. Forward-looking organizations are positioning themselves not as static employers, but as platforms for professional growth and meaningful problem solving.
So it's a reframing of the relationship.
It's a mutual investment model. The organization invests in learning and development, and in return, employees bring fresh perspectives and actively challenge inefficient practices.
And sustainable innovation, it requires distributed leadership, empowerment at all levels, but especially in that middle management layer, which so often faces the most resistance.
Those middle managers need three things from the executive level: protected time, protected resources, and visible political backing. If a manager tries an innovative process and gets pushback, they have to know the executive office will support them.
Mm-hmm.
And leaders have to continuously reinforce purpose. Daily bureaucratic work can so quickly disconnect staff from the ultimate mission.
So how do you fix that?
Research on beneficiary contact shows that allowing staff to meet and hear from the people they're serving, the people whose lives are being changed, it significantly increases their motivation, their persistence, their innovative capacity. It reconnects that abstract procedure back to a real person. It rekindles the PSM that started it all.
And the final pillar for long-term capability has to be creating continuous learning systems. Innovation requires being able to systematically extract and institutionalize insights from experience.
And that requires discipline. Clear metrics, disciplined evaluation, and accessible repositories of knowledge. Practically, organizations need systems to track which procedures generate actual value versus those that are just bureaucratic fiction.
To build an evidence base for reform.
Exactly. You have to allocate specific time for reflection-like mandatory after-action reviews following big initiatives to make sure the lessons learned, positive or negative, are documented and shared, not just buried.
So let's bring this all together for you. The main finding from the sources is, I think, undeniable. Public service motivation is the essential energy source, but it's the organizational conditions, low red tape, high job satisfaction, that determine its utility. The path forward isn't the impossible ideal of eliminating all bureaucracy, but a really surgical, managerial, and compassionate approach to balancing these forces.
The three key principles we hope you take away are these. First, transparency around bureaucratic realities is vital for building trust. Second, fair process matters just as much as optimal outcomes. People will accept necessary constraints if they feel the rules are applied justly.
And
And finally, capability building requires resource investment, protected time, and structured training, not just inspirational speeches.
that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. We spent time discussing how organizations must reward both successful innovations and intelligent failures that generate learning, but how do you make that stick? How can leaders intentionally institutionalize failure forums or formal, safe processes to ensure organizational memory captures the lessons learned from experiments that didn't work, rather than just letting shame bury those mistakes? That ability to normalize and learn from failure is the core strategy for maintaining the psychological safety you need for continuous improvement.